Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's cybersecurity panel. We're very excited that you all have joined us. As you can see, we have a great group of panelists lined up to speak today and share some of their knowledge on a number of important topics in cybersecurity right now. We'll be talking about product development. We'll be talking about how to sell and market your product, especially in this challenging environment that all of us are living in. And we'll be talking about some big trends that investors or maybe people that you're selling to are talking about right now. And so you'll see on the screen here that there is a chat box. I know we have the next 40 minutes together. So if you have a question, please do drop it in the chat box and we'll try to get to Q&A closer to the end of this session. Before we hear from our panelists, I will briefly introduce myself. My name is Casey Aylward, and I'm an investor at Costanoa Ventures, an early stage VC fund based in the Bay Area. I'm focused on our cloud native infrastructure and cybersecurity practice. And so with that, I'd love to ask the panelists to introduce themselves briefly. Pierre, let's start with you.
Hi, I'm Pierre Betouin. I am the co-founder and CEO of Sqreen. Sqreen is an application security management platform that we launched in 2015, initially in Paris, and now we are based in Paris and San Francisco. We have 70 employees, and we protect over 900 companies today. George.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm George Lotigier, the CEO of Vade. We are supposed to be a leading company in the email cyber attack detection using artificial intelligence. We are a 100% French company. We are providing three markets: OEM, so the main security vendors; ISP, the main email provider, ISP telco in the largest country worldwide. And we cover through them 1 billion of mailboxes. And we target also SMB through channel. We are based in Lille, north of France, and we have offices in Boston, San Francisco, Montreal, Vancouver, and Tokyo. And this market is really interesting because 90% of cyber attacks are starting with email.
And I'm Lana, Knop, and I'm currently the VP of Product Management at McAfee. At McAfee, I have what we call internally the platform group, and that includes all the products that span across essentially data, intelligence, and analytics. So things like our SIM product, we have an insights product, which does analytics, helps our customers do the 3 Ps, which is essentially prioritize what's targeting them, predict what would happen if it were to hit their environment, and lastly, prescribe what to do, what countermeasures to change, and how to best prepare for these cyber attacks.
Great. So let's jump right in. Everyone in this group has spent many years developing security products, but obviously this year is a little bit different with 2020, and all of us working completely remotely for most of the year. So I'm curious to hear from you guys how the shift to work from home has affected the various products that you're building. So if you don't mind talking a little bit about what you're working on and then how that's shifted in the last couple of months. Lana, let's start with you.
Sure. So for us, one of the products that we've launched recently at McAfee, which is Envision Insights, again, the 3 Ps of trying to help customers figure out which are the threats that matter, so prioritizing those. In terms of COVID and the pandemic, we've seen huge amounts of activity related to COVID-related themes, and just kind of targeting our customer install base with that kind of anxiety and all the things that people are afraid of as we headed into the pandemic and everybody spread out and dispersed and had all these remote work from home orders. So that kind of rise in that campaign, that threat activity from those actors, we saw that as a really big kind of change as we have been living with the pandemic. Beyond that, just in general, like this huge, we've seen our customers also kind of accelerate their cloud adoption. So if they were already on their digital journey, if they were knowing that they had to do it, being forced to work from home and deal with this dispersed workforce has really accelerated all the customer concerns around that. So from kind of the larger company perspective, who, we weren't born in the cloud, but we're definitely a device to cloud company. We have many products that still have on-prem footprints that have these cloud strategies and visions, and we found that we were accelerating those to kind of meet customer plans.
George, what do you think?
For the product itself, we had no real change because we secure the communication between users, and so the emails were highly used in the pandemic period. So the fact is, as said Lana, the market need was increased. And in the same time, the attack by email were multiplied by something like 2, and some kind of attack by 7. So we were super solicited by our customer. Our filter accuracy were highly challenged by the actuality. And so we did a lot of innovation to improve the accuracy of the detection. And we also made some new orientation to our product to give more information, contextual information to the administrators of our customers. And we have released what we call the current event. So we give information, statistics, and so on Emotet, for example, on COVID subject in the attacks, to give some material to well understand what kind of attack can arrive. And also we have given more information to the end user through, for example, what we call the threat coach. So we give contextual training for the end user to be able to detect what is going through our filter, because we don't, it's impossible to detect 100% of the attacks, so some are going through. And so we have provided a tool to help the user to train on that with contextual attacks. So this is true attack that we send to the user under control for sure. So the administrator can see who fail and who is well trained and not fall into the trap. So this is mainly what we have seen and what we have done in the product.
Makes sense.
So on our side, we've seen some acceleration, pretty much like you, Lana and George. So many of the network topics and even some infrastructure layers have been more commoditized with the pandemic, and so we saw a shift towards the applications a lot more application-related attacks, and that's also what we focus on. So we could clearly see that as a kind of control tower with some different behaviors coming from different countries. So we saw a correlation of the shift in terms of usage, applications, and the attack surface as well. So we saw the attack surface being adapted with the acceleration of the adoption of certain solutions, which was kind of expected. And in terms of product evolution, not much. We have a much more focus on user authentication. So we also provide some ways for user to correlate the application security activity, so the attacks on the applications, and the user activity. So when you have a web application, a SaaS application, some of the users can be like stolen, or like you can start to see some suspicious activities. And so we started to see a huge focus on the user activity compared than before. A lot of bot activity, some botnets trying to steal user accounts from applications more than before. And so we started to see a shift of attention on that side.
Great. So it seems like products have shifted or changed to varying degrees. But I think also our consumption or maybe engagement with those different security products is also evolving. And so, at least within our portfolio, we've seen that happen at both the individual level and also at the organizational level. So I'm curious if you guys have also seen these big shifts happen, and maybe you can talk about it from kind of both the individual level or organizational level.
Yes, we have seen, as I said, we suffered much more cyber attacks, and the vulnerability was increased because of the lot of home workers. And so the demand was increasing in general in cloud security market. And everybody was concerned with the sensitivity to communication security. And I think this is a long time effect because more and more took conscience of the dependence of the IT in general, IT security, the dependence of the economy on that. And we are working in addition to Microsoft Office 365 security, and so that the customers suffered from attacks going through Microsoft 365. So we had an increase of the demand for additional security in complement of Microsoft. And this demand was much more from mid-market. We target small and mid-market. It was much more for mid-market, who was more concerned and probably more organized to react compared to small business. Small business were relatively flat, and mid-market was increasing a lot in terms of demand.
Mm-hmm.
So on our side, not a lot of difference. And the reason is we actually started Sqreen with a full self-serve service. So people could sign up on the platform and could start to use the Sqreen with just one line of code. So the model was already based on a lot of inside sales. So we started with SMB, so very small companies. They could sign up by themselves, exactly like they would do on New Relic or Datadog or any other engineering focused solutions. The segment that changed the more was enterprise, which became de facto an inside sales segment, which is something that actually was actually convenient for us because you don't have to move and you can quickly show the value of your product without having to travel or without having to take some first meeting. So we started to see a shift of go-to-market motions from a pure sales motions on the enterprise towards a much more product-led motion where people have more time to explore the products by themselves, check the documentation. So they usually arrive very prepared to the first calls. We can see that they educate themselves much more than before on these solutions. If all the content is available online and they can check it by themselves.
Yeah, certainly. Just to tack on to that, for what I saw that was a little different, obviously the shift away from being out physically in front of customers, being able to meet with them in this kind of enterprise space. But at the same time, because you're just doing over, video conference, you could fit many more customer meetings in. And it wasn't like, oh, I have to, spend a day traveling and then coming back, which is essentially 3 days out of the office. So it was big, that kind of shift. I think what also was really interesting is launching a new offering during the time of the pandemic was for us, it had a bit of an impact because we like to go through something earlier than a beta, which is like a joint development program with our customers. And it was kind of hard to launch that because our customers who are essentially in the SOC were, they were kind of crushed with all the work that they were going through because, they were constantly hunting. They were fielding all these questions from the board or their management. I just read about this COVID-related threat. I read about that threat. Where are we? Are we covered? Are we okay? So that amount of research actually was a big increase. And so the customers that we sell to actively, it was hard to get their time and attention because that they had their hands full trying to just manage the cyber impact of dealing with remote workforce and the rise in the threat activity that we were observing.
Great. And, the next topic is something that we've already touched on a bit just in talking through different customers that you guys are interacting with every day. But the next question is really about working with different size of customers and what their needs are. So there are obvious pros and cons to working with smaller companies like SMBs versus working with larger enterprises who may have bigger budgets. But we have founders and employees of earlier stage companies listening today in the panel. And I'd love for you to each talk about the types of customers that you work with the most and that you're building products for, and maybe share some advice for founders who might be selling or engaging with similar types of customers.
So we, on our side, we made a very deliberate choice early on to work with SMB companies day one of the company. So when we created the company was created on the mission to democratize security, so to address and to be able to protect as many people as we could. There was a notion of volume tied to the mission. And so the reason we started with SMB was that we had no doubt that we wanted to become an enterprise company. Like most of the security budgets today are concentrated on the enterprise. But when you start a company, you have to iterate through different cycles, product cycles, go to market, and so on. And the enterprise cycles, especially in Europe, are extremely hard to sustain. It can be 18 months, 24 months. And so when you have to iterate at a high velocity on the product side, it's extremely hard. And so we made that choice because we saw a pattern between the SMB and the mid-market, and then on the mid-market and the enterprise. We saw that with SMB customers, we would sell $50 plan a month, but we could replicate that to the mid-market and sell $50K plans a year. And same on the enterprise, we could replicate that to 6 or 7 figure deals a year. But the usage was the same. The types of persona was the same. So engineering teams for the SMB, engineering teams for the mid-market, early security teams for the mid-market, high-end mid-market, and same for the enterprise. And so we made the choice to go up market, starting from the SMB, because it helped us iterate and build a solution at a high velocity. That's not something that we could have done with the enterprise. However, it needs also to be backed by a VC-backed type model, because you have to spend 1 year or 2 years with hundreds of customers, but a low revenue.
Lana, what do you think?
Yeah, so there's definitely all areas of the spectrum that are McAfee customers. But, I personally have been working with some of our large enterprise customers, especially in these early development programs. And some of the things that concern them are, ease of management. They're concerned about agent consolidation. They might have several products like a DLP agent. They might have an antivirus agent, all these things coming together, an EDR agent. And then just the management of that, the consolidation of that, applying policies across these things, simplification. Those are a lot of their concerns that we get addressed with, because as a kind of a portfolio vendor, they're looking for something that's going to allow them to do more with less, because none of our customers have an abundance of security budget. They always have a fixed one, and it's often being reduced. Their resources are often being kind of cut back. And so what they're looking for from us is, how do they do more with less? Anything that we can do to help them, simplifying the seamless integration, simplifying that management across platform, just pulling it all together. When a endpoint sensor sees a threat, so does your gateway, so does the cloud. Making those things easy and simple to understand really helps our customers. And generally they're looking for that 1 + 1 is 5 kind of scenario. So helping all of those things and ensuring that you're doing it in a way that's seamless, and making sure that you can provide it essentially as a platform, not only for your customers, but for your own internal development teams, is a kind of big focus for us, and something that is one of our kind of main operating principles.
From our side, choosing SMB or large enterprise is a very, very difficult question, and there is no right answer. It's depending on the competition, on the market. And what we observed is that in general, when it's a new market, the large enterprise are open to new kind of technology, but the small are following in general. So when this is a mature market, this is probably right to go into the SMB market, and when it's new, probably more into large market. But also, it's the way they are thinking the product is totally different. The SMB, as you said, Lana, need very simple product integrated with a service. And so if they need service, we have also to work with channel who provide the service. So we have to package something totally simple and efficient. In general, the large enterprise need a lot of features, granularity of configuration, a complicated product in general. And so from our side, we decided to do the best detection product, which is not absolutely needed by the small company in general. It's more needed by the biggest company. And so we address the biggest company through OEM when we provide some component of security to security vendors who can be competitors. We provide our technology to integrators, large integrators, are the ISP telco, and a very simple product, very open product to other services, to partners who are MSP, managed service provider. So from the ISP to the MSP. And it's a very difficult problem, and the only thing is to be the best where on the market we address. If we are not the best, we don't sell. So we have to find a path.
Be the best. That's good advice. So, I guess one of the very common ways for a startup to go and build credibility or access maybe a larger customer base is by working with larger incumbents, incumbents where everyone knows the name and is already using their products. Or perhaps, George, you described a channel strategy, so I'd be curious to hear more about that. But do you have advice on your experience in working maybe with larger incumbents or pursuing a channel strategy? And what has worked for you and what hasn't? And maybe share some of that advice with today's listeners.
It's not an easy thing also anyway to make this choice. In general, to address direct the customer is the customer acquisition cost is high, except if it is a very simple product that you can buy through the internet. But this is not the case in general in security, where the end customer has to be confident in the brand, which is not known if you are a small company growing. And second, in general, they are needing services. So we have made the choice of the channel because of that, because the customer need service, and we have no brand today, or very small. And so our persona, our target is the MSP finally, and not the end customer. We try to provide a product which helps the MSP to provide value, to simplify his life, because in general, to install a product and to maintain it, it's complicated, and to open the product to other services, to give him the possibility to build a SOC, security operating center, using some product like SOR. I don't know how you spell that, how you tell that. And so on. So we are open to other products of security. So the key is to convince the channel that you will bring something to them. This is not only a matter of product. This is a perfect integration into the job of your channel. And the difficulty is that through a channel, you don't control each POC, each event of your selling process. So this is very hard because you are waiting and nothing happens. So you have to well know the channel and to be very, very close to them to well understand how they are working and to make an animation of that. So this is channel marketing. This is really a specific job.
And Pierre, how have you guys thought about working with incumbents, or are you working with incumbents at Sqreen?
So we made a completely different choice, but the nature of the product, I think, are very different as well. We decided not to work with channels for a long time, and the reason was we created a new category. What we do is not a web application firewall. It's not a RASP. It's something new. It's application security management. Exactly like when you started to see the APM space for performance or whatever. You have a lot of work in order to position the solution well, in the right category, in order to message it the right way, and so on. And so not being able to control the sales cycle from the beginning to the end in the early stage of the company is tricky. You need really to get the feedback, to iterate on the feedback, and so on. However, what we decided to do was to create some product channels. So some kind of channel strategy where we could really control everything end to end. So one of the example is Heroku, AWS Marketplace is another, like where you can just drive some type of activity towards your platform, but you control everything from the first discussion to the end. So you can really make sure that you position your solution the right way. You will have a lot of questions because, again, people need to be educated when you have a new category and so on. You need to explain them what you do. You need to explain them the competitive advantage, the differentiation in a crowded market like security, like the security market and so on. So we decided not to go after channels. That's something that we are starting right now because we are much more mature in terms of positioning, in terms of what ASM, application security management, means to the audience. And so now we are more comfortable training and starting to outsource those early conversations at least.
And Lana, you are working at one of these very well-established incumbents, as we call them, and you've also, been working at more established companies previously in your career. And so as someone who's been working at one of these companies, I'm curious how you maybe find or assess startups or start thinking about how to evaluate them for when you'd want to work with them.
Yeah, so for us, it's always just making sure that we're really partnering well with our partner team. So with McAfee, we've got the SIA program. There's 150 plus partners that are in that security innovation program. And what that means is I think I've always looked at McAfee and thought they had a great kind of external approach. So they, we have open sourced something called DXL, which is like a messaging fabric communication, and essentially made it easy for anybody to talk to McAfee products, send us events, see about events that we want to share. Having that ability to communicate and integrate across products really helps drive and pull through and bring forward potential partners, potential startups, people that have developed a niche capability that maybe McAfee has not invested in its portfolio. I mean, there's so many aspects of cybersecurity. There's always everything that you could work on and the things that you end up working on. So if there's some capability that's just missing and a new startup pops up into the marketplace, then they kind of look at us and see an opportunity and they'll bring it to us, or our partner will go out and kind of canvas the market and then figure out where we might have potential opportunities to have some synergies with these integrations. Things that also speed this kind of capability up are, of course, having an ability to do just have a shared security language, and that's something like the OCA, which McAfee helped co-start last year with IBM. The Open Cybersecurity Alliance is what that stands for. And essentially, each contributed something, and to that, McAfee contributed our essentially based in DXL or Open DXL language ontology of what this event is, what it means, and then you can immediately start doing something with it. So the ability to drop right into like that OODA loop of, orient, observe, decide, and act. Being able to know what something is, what it means in your environment, and what to do about it. Though that speeding up that cycle is kind of the whole purpose of the OCA. So for us, identifying who to work with is really about figuring out where we can come together and offer a greater together strategy to our end users and customers. But to really facilitate that, you have to have things that you're making available, like sharing your events, sharing the data that you have that you've collected regarding security for your customers and for your customer benefit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. Great. And, we've talked today about how some of these big trends or maybe this new environment that we're in have shaped the products that we're building and have changed maybe how users and organizations are adopting those products. I'll also note that aligning to big security trends that people are talking about can align you with the broader conversation and garner attention from different security buyers or maybe even investors to raise capital. And so I'd love to hear from you guys, what do you think some of the biggest opportunities or topics in security are today? Pierre, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think there is no major change. There is an acceleration again. So when you see all the secular changes around digital transformation, which is absolutely not new, move to the cloud or API, microservices, and so on, all those trends are macro trends are just being accelerated. And so the counterpart on the security sides are also accelerating. If you protect microservices, APIs, there is clearly an acceleration on that side. If you are an authentication protection company, for sure, you are going to see much more activity than before. And so I think nothing really changed, maybe except for the, on-prem, that will probably people using those solutions and so on. But I think that you will just see an acceleration of the existing trends around the digital transformation, move to modern architectures, and so on.
Lana, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely acceleration around existing trends. I also think that what we saw maybe last year and the year before was a lot of interest around the MITRE ATT&CK framework and wanting to see that in all aspects of products so that essentially, again, customers can create the context and understand what to do. When they see something alert on their screen, they understand the context, they can see and look up some kind of a specific TTP, they can do some research based on that, and they can kind of just speed up that process. I think there's also, lots of little acronyms rolling around. So lots of focus lately on ZTNA. We have all these trends, but I don't think that any of those are necessarily new. What I also kind of see on the softer side is, it seems like customers are starting to be a little bit more willing to share. I felt like maybe something like 8 years ago, people were very much wanting to consume data, but not really contribute. So it was like this kind of schizophrenic, I want to see as much as I can about the data, but I never want to share it. Whereas we're lately starting to see a little bit more of sharing. So not only do people want to consume and see all the data that everybody's pushing in, but they also are saying, okay, I'm going to open up a little bit and do more sharing. So I think that is a great movement, because at the end of the day, we're going to be able to help protect our customers better if everybody is sharing a little bit more. Of course, in a very, conservative way, and everything needs to be anonymized, and all those things need to be observed. But at the same time, the more we know, the more we can help and kind of detect and perform analytics.
Mm-hmm.
George, what do you think?
Like Lana, I'm thinking that nothing really new, but we are in an acceleration of the trends. We can think that we are thinking that the data is the value now in cybersecurity, and the opportunity are huge because there is no border and the attacks are polymorphic, targeted. It's so today the way to detect that kind of attack is more using a behavior analysis, machine learning, artificial intelligence. So this is really a trend. Also a new trend, not new, but in acceleration, is the collaboration. We need to exchange the data between the different security vendors and for the customers or the integrators we are working with. And in particular, we are thinking that the main weakness is in the IT in general is the human. And cyber criminals are targeting human failures. And so we are thinking that the security in the communication is one of the best opportunity. And that's where we are trying to be. Vade Secure is trying to be human-centric cybersecurity leader. But really oriented in human-centric cyber security. So that's the trend we are thinking of.
Great, thank you. So we have a handful of minutes left. I want to make sure we get to Q&A and some of the questions you guys have asked. So let's shift to that. We have a question from the audience asking about what are some of the most common data security or cybersecurity mistakes that you're seeing companies make. So Lana, let's start with you.
Some of the most common data security mistakes or cybersecurity mistakes. I know this is very not new, but patching is just fundamental and basic. The issue becomes which ones apply to me, the context of our corporate environment, and how do I prioritize these? So I don't know if this is necessarily a mistake, but just a recurring issue is, with every time you get the vulnerability list out, and then just trying to understand and set that into context at your company so that you know where to focus first, or if you even have any concerns that you need to actually address, or if any of your existing cybersecurity products, technologies, or countermeasures may have already compensated for these things, like a number of zero-day technologies from McAfee, from other vendors already exist out there to just kind of fill the gap, ahead of time. That's kind of one of the fundamental things that we see going on. Is still it's a hard problem. It's a difficult problem. It's constantly changing. And so it just is something that I continue to see with our customers. And it's something that they're continuing to grapple with because it's an operational issue as well.
Pierre, what do you think?
On our side, it would be probably proactivity versus reactivity. One of the common mistakes that is made, especially in the mid-market, when you start to have a security program and so on, is to be fully reactive. So you are usually trying to react when a threat happens or when an attack is done. So you try to act afterwards, where most of the well-prepared company are shifting towards the proactivity. So really being able to identify vulnerabilities and not attacks earlier, being able to protect the applications and not just react in terms of attacks. So one of the common mistakes is to really focus on the reactivity, and making sure that you are prepared for a breach and so on is great, but you also need to train the engineering teams. You also need to make sure that you don't ship code with a lot of vulnerabilities, that you monitor the activity at runtime and so on. And so one of the common mistakes is not to be able to shift towards proactivity, which is exactly the same case for performance or for reliability. You don't want to have an outage, right? And react when you have an outage. You want to avoid the outage, and that's pretty much the same philosophy. You need to shift towards more proactivity to avoid those incidents.
And from our side, I would say only the main thing is that there is a lot of companies who are not training the user to what can happen and to avoid phishing or something, because in general this is starting with that, to get information, and after that to build an attack by different ways. But in general, this is coming by information taken by a phishing or something, or a ransomware, which is going through the personal computer and so on, getting into the network and so on. So to me, the main important thing for a company is to train the user.
I know we'd have just a minute left. You'll see on the screen that there are selections for the next session that you'd like to join. But maybe quick fire last question that came in from the audience. What is your favorite blog or podcast to recommend? Pierre, do you have one?
Yeah, two of them actually. I like the Secure Developer podcast, which is a podcast where you can hear engineering team and security teams talking together, and the AppSec Builders podcast, which is a shameless plug because it's coordinated by my co-founder, JB.
And
I have no idea from my side.
Lana, from you?
A good one to read is always Krebs and Security. So if you're looking for one, haven't read that, try it out.
Totally. Well, with that, I think we're at the end of time for today. Thank you to everyone for joining and for La French Tech for hosting us. Have a good rest of your day.